Um, Welcome to the deep dive. I'm really glad you're here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
A lot of times we spend our sessions exploring these massive historical concepts, or we're unpacking a new piece of technology, maybe looking at cultural trends.
Right, the high-level stuff.
Exactly. But today we are doing something incredibly grounded, incredibly urgent, and honestly, it's a little bit brutal if you are currently trying to plan a
It
vacation.
really is.
We've got our hands on this massive stack of research, local economic data, highly analytical logistics regarding travel to Eastern Europe, specifically for the 2026 season.
And we're zooming all the way in on two incredibly popular destinations today.
Right, Prague and Krakow. And the mission for this deep dive is to answer a question that, well, it sounds simple, but it's actually surprisingly complex. Are these destinations actually worth it for you anymore?
It is the central question for anyone looking at a map of Europe right now. Because, the material we're analyzing today, it is not your typical glossy, rose-tinted travel blog.
No, absolutely not.
It doesn't care about the romance of a cobblestone street. It is a forensic breakdown of economic realities, shifting baselines, and some really subtle infrastructural traps that are currently defining these cities.
Which is so needed right now.
Yeah, because if you are operating under the assumption, like, honestly, a lot of people do, that you can just grab a backpack, buy a cheap flight, show up, and just wing it. This data makes one thing crystal clear.
Those days are over.
They are definitively, absolutely over. Traveling here in 2026 requires real awareness and a lot of pre-planning.
I want to get right into the biggest shocker in this entire stack of research because it kind of completely reframes how we need to look at this whole region.
The baseline shift.
Yeah, the data states point blank that the entire concept of cheap Eastern Europe is officially obsolete. It's done. It's a ghost.
It's a really hard pill to swallow for a lot of travelers.
I mean, so many of us have this lingering mental model, maybe from trips we took a decade ago or stories from friends, that you can wander into Prague or Krakow and just live like absolute royalty on pocket change.
Right. But that nostalgia is exactly what gets people into trouble today. The numbers show a completely different reality following post-inflationary stabilization.
Because things didn't just go down.
Exactly. Yes, we all know there was a period of intense global inflation over the last few years. But what we're left with now in these specific markets isn't just that prices spiked and then retreated. They didn't retreat.
They locked in.
We are looking at a rigid, elevated baseline. Now, to be fair to the data, these cities are still operating at roughly 30 to 50% below parity with what we call Tier 1 European cities.
So we're talking about compared to places like London, Paris, Geneva.
Right. You aren't paying Paris prices.
Hmm.
But because the baseline floor has been raised so dramatically, navigating Prague and Krakow now demands strict fiscal discipline.
You can't just stumble around.
No, if you just wander around without a plan, you will easily bleed cash and end up spending Tier 1 money in what you assumed was a budget-friendly city.
Let's give you a concrete example of this, because when I read this specific data point, my jaw actually dropped. Let's talk about the absolute foundation of budget travel.
The dorm bed.
The cheap dorm bed. I mean, I vividly remember a time when $15, maybe 20, got you a perfectly acceptable place to crash for the night.
Not anymore.
According to the current pricing indexes we're looking at, peak weekend rates for a standard 8-bed mixed dormitory inside Prague 1, which is the Old Town area, now regularly break the $40 threshold.
Yep.
$40 to sleep in a bunk bed in a room with 7 complete strangers.
And if we look at the historical data, that is a 160% increase over the 2019 benchmarks.
That's insane.
It goes way beyond normal inflation. That is a
Wow.
complete restructuring of the budget hospitality market. For the budget traveler, the margin for error has effectively vanished.
But the economic shock of the room rate isn't even the biggest issue with these places, is it?
No, it's really not. Our sources highlight a massive physical downside tied to the actual infrastructure of these cities, specifically regarding historical preservation.
This is wild to think about. So these city centers are largely UNESCO World Heritage Sites, or they fall under incredibly strict local preservation ordinances.
Which totally makes sense from a cultural standpoint.
Right. You want to protect a 500-year-old building, but it means you cannot just go and bolt an air conditioning condenser to the outside of an old stone facade. External HVAC modifications are strictly legally prohibited.
Exactly. Which brings us to a major conflict. What happens when strict aesthetic preservation collides with modern climate realities?
It gets hot.
Very hot. If we look at the 2026 projections, we are seeing heat waves in Central Europe that sustain temperatures of 32 degrees Celsius, which is over 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
And without AC.
Right, you take a legacy three-star hotel or a residential apartment that someone turned into an Airbnb in the historic center. Because they cannot legally install active cooling systems, the research shows that they physically transform into structural ovens.
Structural ovens. Just picture what that actually means for your day. You're on vacation, you've been walking around since 8 in the morning, you're exhausted, maybe a little jet lagged, and you just want to go back to your room at 3 p.m. to take a nap.
You can't do it.
The data states that between the hours of 14:00 and 20:00, so 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., these budget and mid-range accommodations become practically uninhabitable.
It's a greenhouse effect.
You are paying $40 for a dorm, or maybe $150 for a mid-range Airbnb, only to find you can't even sit in your own room during the hottest part of the day without sweating through your clothes.
You're forced into a severe compromise. The traveler has to choose between staying in a charming, historically authentic building and basic thermoregulation.
Which isn't much of a choice when it's 90 degrees out.
And because you can't stay in your hot room, you are forced out into the city during peak heat, which means you're probably spending money in an air-conditioned cafe just to survive the afternoon. It's a hidden cost.
And there is a massive trap here when you're actually booking these places online, right? I want everyone listening to pay close attention to this because it all comes down to legal terminology on the booking websites.
Yes, the climate control loophole.
This is so sneaky.
In European lodging listings, the phrase climate control legally only mandates that the property has a functional winter heating system, usually just radiators.
Wow.
It does not legally mean they have active refrigerated cooling.
That is so misleading. So you're scrolling through listings, you see the little icon for climate control. You think, great, I'm safe. You show up in the middle of a July heat wave, and there's just a cast iron radiator and a plastic floor fan pushing hot air around your room.
Exactly. You must actively look for the specific phrasing air conditioning in the amenities list. And even then, the research suggests digging into the guest reviews.
To make sure it's real AC.
Right, you want to confirm that it is a localized split-unit system, meaning cold air actually comes out of a unit mounted on the wall, and not just a portable, noisy tube fan that exhausts out of a cracked window. Because if you don't secure real AC, you are genuinely risking heat exhaustion.
So if the summer heat is that oppressive, and the AC is that hard to find, it means timing your trip is everything.
It's the most crucial decision you'll make.
The research outlines exactly when to go to these cities and exactly when to stay far, far away. Let's start with the good news. There is a secret season.
The statistical holy grail.
Yes. Our sources have crunched the historical weather and pricing data and pinpointed a very specific window, May 15th through June 10th.
The intersection of data points during this 26-day window is remarkable. It really is the absolute best time for Central and Eastern Europe. First, you have incredible daylight.
How much are we talking?
You are exceeding 15.5 hours of sunlight, which gives you massive flexibility for your itinerary. Second, you have a significantly reduced probability of steady rain.
And the pricing.
That's the third point, and it's huge. From a purely economic standpoint, the dynamic pricing algorithms for both regional flight and hotels haven't peaked yet.
I couldn't believe the numbers on this when I read the dossier. The pricing algorithms consistently have flights and hotels sitting 25% lower than the July 1st baseline.
It's a massive discount.
Just by going in late May instead of early July, you get a 25% discount across the board, the weather is better, and the days are longer. Plus, the research points out a botanical angle that I honestly wouldn't have thought of.
The parks.
Yeah, the municipal parks. Places like Letna Park in Prague or the Planty surrounding the Old Town in Krakow. They are in peak bloom. You get all this lush, vibrant greenery before the intense summer heat causes that scorched earth vegetation die-off that you see in late August.
It's the optimal time to be there, because if you miss that May to June window and you fall into the overtourism peak, which the data defines strictly as July 1st through August 31st, the reality on the ground is grim.
It sounds like a nightmare.
We are looking at severe density metrics. The pedestrian traffic flow over the Charles Bridge in Prague, or through Krakow's main square, the Rheineck Guni, degrades into what the data describes as shoulder-to-shoulder immobility between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Let's just sit with that image for a second. You've taken time off work, You've spent thousands of dollars on flights and hotels, and you literally cannot walk at your own normal pace.
You're just part of a herd.
You are just trapped, shuffling along in a massive, sweaty human herd over hot cobblestones. And if you actually want to go inside the famous sites, the median wait times for unreserved entry to Wawel Castle's staterooms in Krakow or the Prague Castle circuits exceed 110 minutes.
Nearly 2 hours of standing in a static line in the sun just to get inside.
Unbelievable.
And we also have to factor in the acoustic reality of that environment. The ambient decibel levels in these old town squares escalate dramatically in the summer.
From the crowds.
From the crowds, but mostly from the overlapping, uncoordinated walking tours. All the guides are using personal amplification systems. It becomes a genuine cacophony.
It's just a wall of noise.
Exactly. It creates a highly stressful sensory environment that actively detracts from the culture you traveled there to see in the first place.
Okay, but let's say you're smart. You listen to the data. You aim for that secret season in early June to avoid the crowds. There is still one major hurdle you have to prepare for, and it's an early June weather trap.
Right, the thermal inversions.
The research warns about some intense atmospheric instability during this time.
What the meteorological data shows is that the ground temperature can spike very quickly, hitting 28 degrees Celsius, about 82 Fahrenheit by 1 p.m., combined with very high relative humidity.
So it feels muggy.
Very muggy.
Nah.
And this triggers the rapid formation of cumulonimbus clouds. Ultimately, this intense morning heat creates localized, extremely violent flash thunderstorms.
And they just come out of nowhere.
Completely out of nowhere. They usually only average about 20 minutes in duration, but the volume of water they drop is torrential.
And here's the practical takeaway from the research. If you are walking around in standard cotton apparel, you are in deep trouble.
It's a major tactical error.
Let's say you're wearing a regular cotton t-shirt and jeans, and you get caught in one of these sudden 20-minute downpours. That cotton acts like a sponge. It retains all that moisture. Once the storm passes, the ambient temperature drops significantly.
And you're wearing a wet towel.
If you're wearing wet cotton in that temperature drop, your core body temperature will plummet. You will be absolutely freezing and miserable for the rest of the afternoon.
Which is why the strict recommendation here is a daily carry rule for a high-quality, packable, waterproof rain jacket.
Something like Gore-Tex.
Exactly. Gore-Tex or a similar breathable waterproof shell, you need to have it in your day bag every single day, regardless of what the morning forecast says. A sunny sky at 9 a.m. in Prague in early June is completely untrustworthy. You have to be prepared for that afternoon flash flood.
All right, so we've got our Gore-Tex packed. We've carefully picked our dates. Let's talk about what happens when you actually arrive and step out into these city centers. Because the research spends a lot of time analyzing the sensory overload of these spaces.
It's an intense first impression.
It paints this incredibly vivid picture of the first 500 meters of walking into Prague 1. It says the air smells overwhelmingly of crystallized sugar, cinnamon, and roasting dough.
The Treldik vendors.
If you've ever scrolled through travel photos of Prague, you know exactly what this is. You see these cylindrical pastries wrapping around metal spits, roasting over open coals on almost every corner.
It's an intoxicating smell, but the research dives into the myth versus the reality of the Trelnik, and it's quite revealing.
This blew my mind.
The data explicitly points out that this is a modern commercial invention. It is not some deeply rooted historical Czech staple that local grandmothers have been baking for centuries.
It's not a cultural artifact?
Not at all. It is highly engineered tourist bait. It's designed to create an irresistible olfactory perimeter around the old town to draw people in. It has immense caloric density, but essentially zero nutritional value.
It's a sugar bomb. It's designed to separate you from your cash while you're still jet-lagged and disoriented. But the sensory overload isn't just about the smells. It's intensely physical, particularly underfoot. Let's talk about the ground you're walking on.
The cobblestones.
The data notes that roughly 80% of the central pedestrian zones in these cities are caved with unmortared basalt cobblestones. The locals literally refer to them as cat heads, and they are absolute destroyers of modern luggage.
The statistics on luggage failure are quite stark here. Four-wheel spinner luggage, which is the hard-shell kind with the four little wheels that everyone seems to travel with these days, suffers a 40% failure rate within the first 48 hours of transit across these specific cobblestone surfaces.
40%.
The caster wheels catch in the gaps between the unmortared stones, and the torque literally shears them right
I
off.
can hear the sound of it right now. You're walking along, you hear that terrible clack, 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 and then a sickening snap. And suddenly your sleek, expensive spinner bag is just a heavy plastic box that you are dragging across a 600-year-old stone plaza.
It is a miserable way to start a trip.
So what's the mandate?
The absolute mandate from the research is that you must bring two-wheel inline luggage, the kind with thick, recessed rollerblade wheels. Or, even better, just bring a travel backpack. Do not bring delicate spinner wheels to a cobblestone fight.
And simply getting from the airport to those cobblestones presents its own set of challenges, doesn't it?
It really does. The research breaks down the arrival logistics for both cities, and they are vastly different. Let's look at Prague's Václav Havel Airport first. The major structural deficit there is that the airport is completely disconnected from the primary underground metro rail grid.
So there's no train at the terminal.
None. There is no train platform.
And here is where a lot of people make an expensive mistake. You land, you collect your bags, you walk out of the terminal, and you see a bus clearly labeled Airport Express. It seems like a no-brainer.
Right, it has the word express on it.
But the research points out that this is a trap. It charges an $8 premium to use. And wait, why wouldn't I just take a cab or an Uber if I'm paying a premium anyway? Or why is the express bus so bad?
Because the Airport Express utilizes the exact same surface roads as regular traffic. It offers absolutely zero temporal advantage.
Wait, so it doesn't have a dedicated lane?
No dedicated lane.
Yeah.
You are paying an $8 premium just to sit in generalized Prague surface gridlock. It doesn't get you there any faster than a regular bus.
So you're just paying more to sit in traffic.
Exactly. The most efficient route, the one that data strongly recommends, is Trolleybus 59. This is the high-capacity successor to the old Route 119.
Okay, trolley was 59.
You board it right outside Terminal 1 or 2, and you take it to the Nadriji Veleslaven interchange. From there, you just take an escalator straight down to Metro Line A, which is the green line.
And how long does that take?
The entire journey takes about 50 minutes from the airport to the city center, and the ticket cost exactly 40 Czech koruna, which is roughly $1.70.
Under $2 to get to the city center compared to the $8 traffic jam trap. That's incredible. But here is a massive warning that the research highlights, and it could cost you a lot of money if you aren't paying attention.
The validation protocol.
Yes. You can buy your ticket at the kiosk, but that little piece of paper is completely worthless until you physically insert it into one of the yellow mechanical boxes on the bus or at the metro entrance and stamp the time on it.
This is a critical point of failure for many tourists. Plainclothes transit police operate very aggressively on this specific airport route.
They know you're tired.
They know that exhausted jet-lagged tourists who just got off a long flight will buy a ticket and simply forget to stamp it. The penalty for carrying an unvalidated ticket is a 1,500 CZK on-the-spot fine.
That's over $60.
Yes, and they are not lenient. They will literally escort you to an ATM to withdraw the cash if they have to. It's a severe penalty for a momentary lapse in concentration.
Now compare that stressful arrival to landing at Krakow's John Paul II International Airport. The contrast is night and day.
It's a totally different world.
The research refers to Krakow's SKA1 regional rail line as the absolute gold standard for airport transit.
It's remarkably efficient. The rail line is directly integrated into the terminal building. You walk off the plane, grab your bags, and walk straight onto a train that takes you directly to the main central station, Krakow-Goni.
No buses, no traffic.
None. It takes exactly 20 minutes from terminal to platform, and the ticket is about $5. It's a seamless experience.
However, even in a city with perfect rail integration, there's still a trap. The research warns against the heavily marketed Municipal Bus 300. You'll see signs for it, and it's often pitched on budget travel forums as a cheaper alternative to the train.
It is technically cheaper, by maybe $2. But the data shows that this bus routinely operates at 120% passenger capacity.
So you're packed in.
Standing room only, packed shoulder to shoulder, and crucially, it lacks dedicated luggage storage racks. On top of that, it takes 35 minutes or more to navigate through peripheral suburban traffic. You save a tiny amount of money, but you endure immense physical discomfort and waste a lot of time.
Stick to the train.
Always stick to the train in Krakow.
Okay, so we've survived the airport, we successfully avoided the fake express buses, and our luggage wheels are still intact. Let's talk about where we are actually putting those bags down. The research provides a fascinating breakdown of lodging and neighborhoods.
The lodging matrix.
Right. It divides daily allowance thresholds into 3 distinct tiers: backpacker, mid-range, and luxury. Let's start with the backpacker tier, which is defined as a total daily budget of $55 to $70.
As we discussed earlier with the extinction of the $15 dorm bed, this specific tier is in a state of crisis. If your total daily allowance is $55 to $70, your accommodation is going to immediately consume $25 to $35 of that, just for a standard 6 to 8 bed dormitory.
That's half the budget gone before you even wake up.
And if you are in Prague 1 on a weekend, it will likely breach $40.
So you have maybe $20 left for the entire day.
Exactly. The margin of error is zero. If you are operating on this budget tier in 2026, you cannot make a single financial mistake. You cannot buy a coffee at a cafe. You cannot take an Uber. You cannot eat at a sit-down restaurant. It is an exercise in extreme austerity.
Then we step up to the mid-range tier, which the data defines as $110 to $160 a day. In Prague, you're looking at spending $85 to $130 for a 3-star hotel or an independent guest house.
But there are caveats here, too.
Yeah, the research includes some reality checks to manage your expectations. You should expect very compact floor plans, maybe 12 to 15 square meters. There is a high probability that these legacy buildings will not have elevators.
So you're carrying that bag up 4 flights of stairs.
And of course, you have to deal with that variable HVAC reliability we talked about earlier.
But analyzing these tiers raises a really interesting economic question. Where does the actual value reside in these markets today? And the data points to a fascinating anomaly.
I love this part.
The greatest return on investment in Prague and Krakow is actually found in the luxury tier. If you have a total daily allowance of $350 or more, the value you receive is staggering compared to Western Europe.
A $400 daily spend in Prague or Krakow buys you an experience that would be almost unimaginable for that price anywhere else. You are getting historically renovated palatial suites, you have dedicated concierge layers, flawless air conditioning, and you are eating Michelin-tier tasting menus.
It's a massive contrast.
If you try to replicate that exact same level of luxury in Geneva, Rome, or London, you'd be spending well over $1,200 a day. So while the budget sector has been squeezed tight, the premium sector in Eastern Europe remains severely underpriced.
Which is why understanding neighborhood zoning strategy is so critical no matter which of those 3 tiers you fall into. Knowing exactly where not to stay is just as important as knowing where to book.
So where are the avoidance zones?
In Prague, the data identifies a strict avoidance zone. Prague 1, which encompasses the Old Town and Malastrana.
Why avoid the most beautiful part of the city? I mean, that's what's on all the postcards.
Because you are walking into a trap of hyperinflated food and beverage minimums, premium pricing at the local grocery stores, and most importantly, continuous acoustic disruption from late-night stag tourism.
Oh, the stag parties.
If you don't know what a stag party is, it's essentially a bachelor party. Huge groups of guys fly in from the UK or Germany for the weekend. They get incredibly drunk, and they wander the streets screaming until 4 a.m. Good luck getting any sleep if your window faces those streets.
It's just constant noise. And what about Krakow?
The equivalent avoidance zone in Krakow is the immediate radial streets bordering the main square, specifically Florieska and Grodzka streets. And the reason is similar. Nocturnal club egress noise.
Egress noise, meaning when everyone leaves.
Right. When the underground clubs let out at 3 a.m., the sound of hundreds of people talking and shouting bounces right off those historic stone facades and funnels directly into the residential windows above.
So if we are avoiding the exact center, how do we optimize? Where should we actually be staying?
The research points us slightly outward to the secondary neighborhoods. In Prague, the optimization targets are Prague 2, which is the Vinohrady neighborhood, and Prague 3, the Žižkov neighborhood.
What's the benefit there? I mean, you're further from the castle.
You are, but you are only a 10-minute tram ride away from the very center. In exchange for that 10-minute commute, you achieve a 40% reduction in restaurant and cafe pricing.
That is a massive saving.
Furthermore, these neighborhoods aren't just cheaper. They hold a very high density of specialty coffee shops, independent bakeries, and authentic local gastronomy. It's where the actual residents of Prague live and socialize.
And for Krakow?
The optimization target is Kazimierz, the historical Jewish quarter. The research notes that this area offers the maximum concentration of independent culinary venues. You get lower median nightly rates for your hotel or Airbnb, and honestly, a far superior aesthetic authenticity compared to the sterilized, heavily manicured areas right around the castle walls. Just feels more alive.
Which actually brings up a huge point about how we sustain ourselves once we've put our bags down in Žižkov or Kazimierz. Because finding the right neighborhood is only half the battle. We need to talk about culinary logistics and the subtle convenience taxes that can drain a budget.
Absolutely. Let's start with street food. We already talked about the Prague Tridelnik, that $6 to $9 sugar cylinder that smells amazing but leaves you hungry an hour later.
The tourist bait.
Right. Contrast that with Krakow's equivalent street food, the zapiekanka. The price point is roughly the same, also about $6 to $9, but the data shows it is an entirely different beast when it comes to value.
Tell us about the zapiekanka.
The zapiekanka is an open-faced, toasted baguette. It's traditionally loaded with a heavy layer of mushrooms, melted cheese, and various heavy sauces. You'll find it heavily concentrated in Plaknawi, which is a square right in the heart of the Kazimierz district.
And it actually fills you up.
From a purely nutritional and logistical standpoint, the research identifies the zapiekanka as the optimal caloric-to-cost ratio for budget stabilization.
Translation. It's a massive, heavy, delicious meal that will actually keep you full for 6 hours as opposed to a temporary sugar spike. It's the ultimate cheap fuel for walking around all day.
Exactly.
Now, if you actually want to sit down at a table, the data establishes a baseline. A traditional main course, like a hearty goulash in Prague or a plate of pierogi in Krakow, plus a half-liter draft beer, should run you somewhere between $14 and $22 US. Provided you are eating outside that primary tourist radius we talked about avoiding.
The geographic markup on beverages is particularly illuminating in this data. Let's look at the price of a half-liter draft beer.
Okay.
In a local neighborhood pub in Vinorati or Kazimierz, that beer will cost you roughly $2.50 to $3.50.
Okay.
If you order that exact same volume of the exact same brand of beer sitting at a cafe in the Prague Old Town Square or the Krakow Main Square,
How much?
you are paying $6, $7, sometimes more. You're paying a 100% geographic markup solely for the privilege of sitting within eyeshot of a monument.
That is the tourist tax in action. But let's say you're really trying to stretch your dollars. You're doing the grocery store run to make your own sandwiches. You have to know your supermarkets because they are not all created equal.
Grocery warfare.
Yes. In Prague, the major operators are Albert, Billa, and Lidl. The pricing benchmarks are very reasonable. You're looking at about $1.10 for a liter of milk, maybe 85 cents for a loaf of bread. But the research flags a subtle trap.
The transit hubs.
Right. Albert locations that are situated inside central transit hubs, like the main train station, operate on a slight markup compared to their locations in residential neighborhoods.
It's a small convenience tax. But the situation in Poland regarding convenience taxes is much more aggressive, and the data stresses that travelers must be aware of it. In Krakow, your primary supermarket operators are Biedronka, Ukopka, and Lidl. Biedronka is identified as the mandatory target for systematic budget provisioning. The prices represent the true, uninflated local baseline.
But then there's Uopka. If you walk around Krakow, you will see Uopka with its green, smiling frog logo on almost every single corner. They are inescapable.
They are everywhere.
The research explicitly calls this chain out. They operate on a proximity-based convenience model. They have achieved total market saturation, but they levy a covert 20% point-of-sale premium on identical staple commodities, things like dairy, bottled water, and baked goods compared to Biedronka.
It's the illusion of convenience actively draining your budget. Think about the psychology. You're tired, the Uopka is right next door to your Airbnb, and the Biedronka is a 4-block walk.
You're just going to go to the Uopka.
And if you rely on Uopka for your daily provisions because it's 30 seconds closer, you are systematically overpaying by 20% on every single item. Over the course of a 2-week trip, that continuous 20% bleed is enough to completely break a backpacker's ledger.
Okay, let's say we avoid the grocery traps and we go out to a nice restaurant. We need to talk about survival in restaurants, specifically regarding etiquette and the tipping trap.
Etiquette is huge here.
The research flags a massive linguistic faux pas that a lot of well-meaning tourists make. Do not, under any circumstances, use Russian words like spasibo to say thank you to your waiter.
This is a critical point of cultural literacy. A lot of travelers arrive with a generalized assumption of Slavic interchangeability. They think, oh, they're Eastern European, they share similar language roots, they'll appreciate me saying a Russian thank you.
It seems polite in their head.
But the data makes it clear that this is deeply offensive in both Czechia and Poland. It ignores the historical reality and trauma of Soviet occupation. It demonstrates a profound ignorance of their distinct national histories. If you do not know the local Czech or Polish words for thank you, English is overwhelmingly preferred.
Saying spasibo is a guaranteed way to get a cold stare and terrible service for the rest of your meal. And speaking of service, we need to talk about how you pay for it, because there's a sneaky trap here. The standard expectation for table service in these countries is roughly a 10% tip.
But watch out in the tourist zones.
The research issues a stark warning about restaurants operating in those hyper-tourist areas.
Establishments in these high-traffic zones frequently execute what is essentially double-dipping on gratuities.
Hmm.
When they bring you the bill, they will automatically include a gratuity, often vaguely labeled as a service charge in small print.
And they don't mention it.
Crucially, the wait staff will rarely inform you of this inclusion when they hand you the wireless credit card terminal. They are banking on the fact that you won't scrutinize the itemized receipt, hoping you will manually add another 10 to 15% tip onto the terminal screen.
It's so sneaky. You end up tipping 25% without realizing it. You have to scrutinize the paper receipt. If you see the words service charge, you select 0 on the tip screen when they hand you the machine, period. Don't feel guilty about it. You've already paid the tip. So taking all this into account, the expensive dorms, the food markups, the grocery traps, what does this actually mean when we put a daily budget together? The research gives us some daily out-of-pocket ledgers, assuming your flights and main transport are already paid for. Let's look at that backpacker again, trying to survive on $55 to $70 a day.
We can break down the math to show just how austere that lifestyle is in 2026. Let's take the low end, $55.
Okay, $55?
$25 goes immediately to the dorm bed, assuming you found a good deal. $3 is allocated for 2 municipal transit tickets. You have $8 allocated for supermarket sourcing. That means walking to Biedronka or Lidl to buy ingredients for your breakfast and a packed lunch. $10 goes to one major handheld street food item like the zapiekanka for dinner.
Let's do the math. That leaves you with exactly $9. You have $5 for culture, which maybe gets you a discounted student entry to a small museum or covers the tip for a free walking tour, and $4 for a recreation, which buys you exactly 2 beers at a local, off-the-beaten-path neighborhood pub.
That is it. Your day is done.
If you decide to sit down and buy a cappuccino, you blow the budget. If you forget to validate that transit ticket, your entire week's budget is destroyed.
Now, compare that highly stressful existence to the mid-range ledger, operating on $110 to $160 a day. Here, the math opens up considerably. You allocate $60 to cover your half share of a 3-star double room. You have $15 for transit, which gives you the flexibility to use a Bolt or Uber ride if you're tired.
That's a game changer.
It is. $10 gets you a proper specialty coffee and a pastry at a nice cafe. $35 comfortably covers a sit-down dinner and a casual cafe lunch. You have $25 for 2 standard museum entries and $15 left over for an evening cocktail or a few craft beers.
It's infinitely more comfortable. It's the difference between merely surviving a city on a strict mathematical formula and actually experiencing the city as a guest. And the luxury ledger at $350 plus is a completely different world. You're dropping $150 plus for your half of a premium suite, $50 for private airport transfers, $100 plus on incredible multi-course tasting menus, and $50 for private, skip-the-line guided access to the monuments.
But regardless of whether you are a backpacker or a luxury traveler, there are micro-costs in these cities that will catch you off guard if you aren't prepared.
Oh, the bathrooms.
Yes. The data specifically highlights public sanitation infrastructure. You must expect mandatory access fees for virtually all public restrooms. We're talking about fees of 50 euro cents, 10 to 20 Czech koruna, or 2 to 4 Polish zloty. And this includes restrooms inside major fast food franchises and transit stations.
Wait, so they actually charge you for the bathroom?
Every time.
Even if you buy food?
Even if you just bought a full meal. You cannot just walk into a McDonald's, blow past the counter, and use the bathroom for free like you can in the U.S.
Sure.
There's literally a physical turnstile blocking the bathroom door, and you have to pay the machine to get through.
That always shocks people.
While a lot of these turnstiles accept contactless card payments now, the research strongly notes that keeping some exact coinage in your pocket is essential to prevent a literal biological emergency if the card reader is broken.
Always carry coins. And another microcost, luggage storage. Let's say you have to check out of your Airbnb at 10 a.m., but your train doesn't leave until 6 p.m. If you need to stash your bags at the main rail stations, those automated lockers use dynamic pricing now. It averages $6 to $8 for a 12-hour block for a large suitcase.
It all adds up quickly. And speaking of things that drain your finances, we need to move into some of the more serious warnings in this research.
The dark stuff.
This brings us to the dark arts of tourism. The traps, the scams, and the extortion. The data gets incredibly specific here about what to watch out for. Let's begin with trap 1, the currency exchange street hustle.
This one is insidious because it preys on your politeness. It is heavily concentrated in Prague, specifically right outside major bank ATMs and busy transit hubs. Here's the scenario. You were standing there, you've just used the ATM, you have cash in your hand, and immediately a very well-dressed, polite individual approaches you. They don't look like a stereotypical scammer.
They look professional.
They might claim they have an urgent need to split a large bill for a taxi. Or they might offer you a highly favorable black market exchange rate for your euros or dollars.
The psychology they're using is highly manipulative. They approach you during a moment when your wallet is out, your mind is on currency conversion, and your guard is slightly down. The entire fraud relies on visual similarity. If you agree to the exchange, the physical currency they hand you consists of defunct Belarusian rubles or demonetized pre-1993 Czech koruna.
And to the untrained eye, especially if you just got off a plane and you literally don't know what Czech money is supposed to look like, it looks like legitimate currency. It has watermarks, it has numbers on it. But mathematically and legally, it is completely worthless paper. You just traded a $50 bill for a piece of historical trivia.
Which is why the actionable advice from the research is absolute. You must maintain zero tolerance for peer-to-peer street exchange. You must ignore all verbal solicitations near financial hardware. Do not engage in conversation. Do not try to be polite. Just keep walking.
Now, Trap 2 is something that sounds like it was ripped straight out of a sci-fi movie, but it's happening right now in both cities. It's called infrastructure quishing, or QR phishing. It targets municipal parking meters, electric scooter rentals, and even those transit ticket kiosks we talked about.
It is a brilliant and devastating evolution of theft. Fraud networks mass print extremely high-quality adhesive QR codes. They then physically walk around the city and place these fraudulent stickers directly and precisely over the official municipal QR codes on the physical machines.
Imagine this. You walk up to a parking meter. You see a QR code that says scan to pay. You scan it with your phone's camera, and it routes you to a flawlessly cloned payment website. It has the city's logo, the right colors, everything. It looks exactly like the official website.
But it's a dummy domain.
Exactly. It's designed solely for credit card data extraction. You type in your credit card details to pay for a $2 parking spot, and they immediately drain your bank account.
The countermeasure requires physical vigilance. The data suggests that you must visually inspect all physical QR codes in the environment before scanning them. Look closely at the sticker. Look for peeling corners, mismatched lamination, or raised edges that suggest one sticker has been placed over another.
Better yet, don't scan anything at all.
Exactly. The most foolproof solution is to bypass environmental scanning entirely. Default to utilizing the official, pre-downloaded municipal transit applications. In Prague, that is the PID Lichka app, and in Poland, it's Jade.
Download those apps while you are still sitting on your couch at home. Okay, Trap 3 is the one that makes me the most angry because it is entirely legal, it is everywhere, and it targets everyone. It's the ATM dynamic currency conversion, or DCC, extortion.
This practice is pervasive across all Eastern European tourist corridors. It is primarily dominated by independent ATM operators. You will see these standalone machines everywhere, in convenience stores, on street corners, and bars. They operate under brands like Euronet.
Here is exactly what happens. You put your debit card into the machine. The machine's software instantly identifies that your card is from a foreign bank. It then aggressively prompts you with a screen offering to process the transaction using their guaranteed exchange rate to protect you against market fluctuations. It presents this as a helpful service.
It's pure manipulation.
The screen design is incredibly manipulative. It usually features a massive, reassuring green button that says accept and a tiny, intimidating red button that says decline or continue without conversion.
The psychological trap hinges on the word guarantee. The machine is indeed guaranteeing a rate, but what it doesn't clearly state is that this guaranteed rate contains a hidden markup of 12 to 15% above the actual real-time interbank rate. It is a legally sanctioned extraction of your capital disguised as a protective service.
Listen to me very carefully on this point because this is the golden rule of international travel. Whenever an ATM or a credit card machine asks if you want to pay in your home currency or the local currency, always, always, always choose the local currency. Select decline conversion or without conversion or pay in CZK or PLN.
You want your home bank to do the math.
Yes. You want your home banking institution back in the US or the UK to execute the mathematical conversion behind the scenes. Your home bank will do it at the standard Visa or MasterCard baseline rate, which usually involves a markup of just 0 to 3%. Do not let the foreign ATM do the math for you.
Furthermore, the research strongly recommends avoiding those freestanding independent kiosks entirely. You should only utilize ATMs that are physically built into the masonry of actual recognizable banking institutions, banks like Iskaz Posilna or Komerční banka in Czechia or PKO and PKO in Poland. They are far less likely to utilize aggressive DCC tactics, and they are immune to physical skimming devices.
Okay, we've successfully secured our wallets and our bank accounts. Let's talk about securing our physical bodies. We are moving into the data on medical, physical, and digital security. Let's start with some genuinely good news about physical safety, especially for solo travelers.
The index rating for physical security in both Prague and Krakow is exceptionally high. The data shows that violent crime metrics directed against tourists are statistically negligible. Both cities feature aggressive public illumination protocols, meaning the streets are very brightly lit at night and a high volume of pedestrian traffic at all hours.
The research explicitly states that walking alone at 2 a.m. in these cities is objectively safer than walking at equivalent hours in London, Paris, or major U.S. metropolitan areas. That is a massive relief, especially for solo female travelers. And speaking of transit at night, if you are using rideshare apps, the Bolt app, which is dominant in this region, has a brilliant feature deployed in Prague.
Yes, the data highlights the Women for Women operational tier on the Bolt platform. It allows female passengers to explicitly request female drivers. This significantly enhances transit security and peace of mind during those high-risk nocturnal hours after the trams stop running as frequently. It's a massive win for urban infrastructure.
Now let's talk about staying healthy while you're walking 10 miles a day. The research phrases this as hydration independence. I know a lot of people get nervous about drinking tap water in foreign countries, but the municipal tap water in both Prague and Krakow is subject to incredibly rigorous EU sanitation standards. It is 100% safe, it is naturally mineral-rich, and it tastes great.
The logical conclusion from the data is stark. Purchasing bottled water at a grocery store or a cafe is a critical failure of budget discipline. You are paying a premium markup for a single-use plastic bottle that contains a product freely available at superior quality from any tap in the city. Bring a high-quality reusable water bottle and maintain your budget.
But what happens if you actually get sick or injured? Let's say you sprain an ankle on those terrible cobblestones. There is a specific medical trap you need to avoid. Prague's Old Town is saturated with these private tourist medical centers that operate right out of regular storefronts. They have big neon crosses in the window and advertise English-speaking doctors.
Their research characterizes these private entities as essentially predatory. They prey on the anxiety of tourists and the complexities of foreign travel insurance. Because they are private, they routinely bill up to 300% above standard state-regulated medical rates for minor consultations. They are banking on your panic and your lack of local knowledge regarding where else to go.
So what is the alternative? If you have a real emergency, an acute illness, or a bad injury, you must bypass those private, flashy storefront clinics entirely. You need to route directly to the state-run Motol University Hospital. In Czech, it's called Fakultní nemocnice v Motole.
It is the premier state-run medical facility in the country. Crucially, the data points out that Motol features dedicated English-speaking liaison departments specifically designed to process and assist international patients. And because it is a state facility, they process billing at strict, regulated government tariffs. You will receive superior, comprehensive care without the predatory price gouging.
Okay, so our bodies are safe. What about our digital health? Our phones are our lifelines when we travel. We use them for maps, translation, paying for things, everything. The telecommunications infrastructure in these cities is amazing. The 5G coverage is excellent, and fiber optic Wi-Fi is everywhere.
But there is a significant vulnerability that travelers overlook. The free public Wi-Fi networks at places like Prague Airport and the major central rail hubs. The research characterizes these specific networks as aggressive data harvesting operations. They require invasive registration, asking for your email, your phone number, and sometimes social media access. You are trading your personal data and digital privacy for a few minutes of temporary connectivity.
And honestly, the digital fix for this is so easy and cheap now. The research recommends pre-installing an eSIM profile on your phone. You use a service like Airalo or Saily. You buy the data plan 24 hours prior to your departure while you're still on your secure home Wi-Fi, and you simply activate it the moment the wheels touch down on the tarmac.
Doing this secures an encrypted, private cellular connection before you even step off the plane into the terminal building. You bypass the vulnerable public networks entirely, you have immediate access to your maps and transit apps, and you maintain your digital sovereignty.
Let's move on to one of the favorite parts of this research, because this is where travel dreams get completely crushed, but it's also where true hidden gems are discovered. We are looking at hype versus reality. The data is merciless in analyzing tourist attractions. Let's look at disappointment number one, Prague's narrowest street.
If you spend any time scrolling through travel content on social media, you have likely seen the hype videos for this location. It depicts this incredibly romantic, hyper-narrow cobblestone passage between two historic buildings. It's so narrow that it is regulated by a whimsical, functioning pedestrian traffic light. It promises this moment of peak architectural intimacy and a perfect photo opportunity.
The reality, the research demystifies this completely, and it is hilarious. It is a purely commercial contrivance. It isn't even a real municipal street. It is merely a 15-meter external staircase that was built to serve as the sole ingress and egress for a specific and, frankly, mediocre dining establishment called Vinarna Chodovka.
The logistical execution of this attraction is described as abysmal. Because of the viral hype, tourists will endure a 20-minute static queue, standing in a concrete trench with 50 other people. And why are they waiting? Just to wait for the green light, descend the stairs, arrive at a restaurant patio, face immediate hostility from the waitstaff if they decline to purchase an overpriced $25 meal, and then wait in a secondary queue at the bottom just to climb the stairs back out. The data concludes it is an extraordinary waste of temporal resources.
It's the ultimate Instagram trap. You're waiting in line to look at a restaurant's fire escape. And then we have disappointment number two, which is much more famous, the Prague astronomical clock. Thousands of people gather in the Old Town Square at the top of every single hour to watch this 600-year-old mechanism activate.
From a purely mechanical standpoint, the sequence itself consists of roughly 45 seconds of minor wooden figurine rotation. The research notes that it consistently ranks in global exit polling as the most anticlimactic heritage attraction in all of Europe. People expect an animatronic spectacular, and they get a few slow-moving statues.
But the real danger isn't that you might be bored. The danger is deeply practical. Think about the physical geometry of what happens at the top of the hour in that square. You have a massive, incredibly dense, static crowd. Everyone is standing shoulder to shoulder. And crucially, every single person in that crowd is looking upward at a 45-degree angle, holding their phones in the air.
It creates the ultimate target-rich environment for organized pickpocket rings. The crowd is completely distracted by the clock, their spatial awareness is totally compromised, and their bags, backpacks, and pockets are completely exposed. The data explicitly states that bags are slashed and pockets are emptied almost exclusively during that specific 45-second bell chime. The clock itself isn't the primary attraction. The distracted tourists are the attraction for the thieves.
That is terrifying. Okay, we need a win. We need an authentic triumph to balance out these traps, and the research delivers a fantastic one in Krakow. First, we have to establish the hype overlap, which involves Wall Castle. The data suggests that the interior tours of Wall suffer from severe staging deficits, meaning the rooms are largely empty architectural shells. It demands high entry fees and exhausting queues for very little payoff. So, if we skip the inside of the castle, what is the authentic pivot? Where should we go instead?
The recommended pivot is a place called Zaksowick.
Zaktozoic. Okay, let's unpack why this place is so special. The research suggests you rent a municipal bicycle or grab one of those electric scooters and execute a 20-minute, 3-kilometer ride southwest from the main city center. You leave the tourist zone entirely, and what do you find when you get there?
You find a massive, decommissioned, flooded limestone quarry. It is visually stunning. It features sheer, dramatic limestone cliffs dropping straight down into incredibly vibrant, deep turquoise water. And here is the 2026 reality that makes it so viable. The municipal government of Krakow has invested heavily in this site. They have deployed extensive floating wooden pontoons across the water, creating structured, enclosed swimming zones of varying depths.
It essentially operates as the localized beach for Krakow's youth. Everyone brings towels, music, snacks, and hangs out on these floating wooden decks. And the value proposition is mathematically unbeatable. It has a $0 entry fee. It's totally free. Furthermore, it has an incredibly high integration with genuine local culture. You are surrounded by actual residents, not just other tourists holding guidebooks. It's vibrant, it's authentic, and the data concludes that it yields a 100% superior emotional and aesthetic return on investment compared to shuffling through those sterile wall-wall museum circuits.
It's exactly. It represents the profound difference between passively observing a city's history as a consumer and actively participating in a city's present culture. But this raises a broader, almost existential question for the modern traveler. What if even the secondary neighborhoods and the local swimming holes aren't enough? What if the commercialization, the overtourism, and the massive price inflation of Prague and Krakow trigger a total threshold rejection?
Yep.
What if you decide it's just not worth the hassle?
That brings us to the final major section of this research, the pivot. The search for the new cheap Europe. If you really want to capture that original Eastern European value proposition, that magical feeling of discovery and affordability from the 2010s, you have to look at entirely different locations. Alternative one, according to the data, is Sofia, Bulgaria.
Sofia is a fascinating case study. The economic data shows that Sofia operates dynamically in the exact same space where Prague existed 15 years ago. Now, the aesthetic profile is drastically different. It's not a fairy tale city of spires. It is much grittier. The architecture is dominated by imposing, brutalist concrete blocks from the Soviet era, which are bizarrely intermixed with ancient excavated Thracian and Roman ruins. But crucially, while it looks gritty, the data confirms it maintains strict European safety baselines.
And the value. The numbers are insane. You see a radical price collapse compared to what we just discussed in Central Europe. The research tracks a very specific metric, a comprehensive sit-down, three-course dinner for two individuals at a nice restaurant, inclusive of a bottle of local wine. In Sofia, that entire experience holds steady at just $50 US total.
Furthermore, if we connect this to the digital infrastructure discussion we had earlier, Sofia possesses some of the most advanced, deregulated fiber optic networks in the entire Balkan Peninsula. Because the internet is so fast and the cost of living is so low, it has rapidly emerged as a premier hub for digital nomads and remote workers who require extreme bandwidth at rock-bottom operational costs.
It sounds like the perfect target for a month-long workation. But what if you are an architecture purist? You hate the dense crowds of Prague, but you absolutely love majestic history and design. You don't want brutalism. For that demographic, the research points to alternative two, Riga, Latvia.
Riga is the ultimate strategic deployment for the aesthetic purist. The architectural dominance here is Art Nouveau. In fact, Riga commands the highest concentration of preserved Art Nouveau facades on the entire planet. Whole districts are filled with these incredibly ornate, beautiful buildings. You get the breathtaking architectural majesty of a place like Paris or Prague, but without the shoulder-to-shoulder immobility on the sidewalks.
And the food scene. I enthusiastically love this detail from the data. The Riga Central Market. Get this. The market is housed inside 5 massive, repurposed German Zeppelin hangars from the 1920s. You literally walk into a historic Zeppelin hangar to buy your groceries. And because it operates as a functioning, everyday domestic market for the citizens of Riga, you can procure incredible smoked meats, local Baltic cheeses, and craft alcohol at authentic domestic rates. You bypass the international tourist tax entirely.
It is an unmediated economic environment. You're paying exactly what the locals pay, simply because the city's market hasn't been completely captured and corrupted by the international tourism industry yet.
Okay, we are coming to the end of our massive dive into this data, which means it is time to summarize everything in a final verdict matrix. Let's do a rapid-fire recap of everything we've learned, directed straight at you, the listener, based on your specific travel style and budget.
Let's start with the backpacker. Constrained to that tight $55 a day budget. The verdict: proceed with extreme caution. As we established, visiting these cities on that budget is viable only if you accept complete dietary reliance on Biedronka or little supermarkets. Exclusively utilize large-capacity, unair-conditioned dormitories and permanently ban alcohol consumption within the Old Town perimeters. Your margin for financial error is absolutely zero.
If you are the mid-range traveler operating around $130 a day, highly viable. The value proposition here still remains superior to London or Paris. By tactically deploying your money in secondary neighborhoods like staying in Vinohrady in Prague or eating in Kazimierz in Krakow, you achieve a high-comfort, culturally rich aesthetic without suffering a severe financial hemorrhage.
For the luxury traveler spending $350 or more a day, absolute maximum ROI. You unlock historic palatial suites, private chauffeur logistics, and Michelin-tier dining that would demand well over $1,200 in Western European capitals. The premium sector in these cities remains severely underpriced relative to the global market.
But, and this is the biggest, boldest warning of all in the data, for the unplanned or spontaneous traveler, hard skip. If your grand plan is to simply show up in the middle of July, without pre-booked attraction tickets, assuming you'll easily find a cheap walk-up room with cold air conditioning, you will suffer catastrophic budget failure, wait in endless lines, and likely experience heat exhaustion.
The overarching takeaway from all of this data is that the modern traveler must operate as a tactician. Information is your primary currency. Preparation is your shield against extraction. These cities demand serious, thoughtful pre-planning if you want to extract their true value.
Which brings me to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with before we go. Consider the inherent paradox of modern travel information. Deep dives like this one gathering all this research designed to help travelers find authentic experiences, or budget-friendly street food, or cool neighborhoods like Ishkov. These are the exact mechanisms that accelerate the gentrification of those very destinations.
It is a fascinating, almost tragic feedback loop. By utilizing data to identify a place like Casimir's as the optimal authentic zone, we direct thousands of listeners and readers to go there, which in turn drives the economic forces that will eventually commercialize it, raise the rents, and push the locals out.
Exactly. By the time we learn how to master a city like Prague or Krakow, we've already contributed to transforming it from a living, breathing city into a highly optimized, luxury open-air museum. Which begs the question, in our desperate quest to outsmart the tourist traps, are we all just drawing the map for the next generation of overtourism? Something heavy to mull over before you click book on those flights. Thank you so much for joining us on this massive exploration on the deep dive. We'll catch you next time.